Okay.
So we're joined all the way from our nation's capital by my friend, the one and only Sassy Harrison, owner, founder, lead creator at Sassy Frizzle Designs there in Washington, D.C. I've got a room full here with me at Velma Jackson High School. This is for our entrepreneurship class. We're recording this for all of our friends in Madison County Schools, Madison Central High School, Ridgeland High School, Germantown High School, the Academic Options Center, and our YouTube channel. So thank you again, now joining us for the fourth time.
Thank you for having me for the fourth time. This is always like a check-in for me for my own milestones, because I'm always thinking about what did I talk about last year and then where I am this year. So I've been able to see my own growth by doing this for the last 4 years. So thank you for asking me back.
Well, you're just such a great inspiration. Now, just give us a little background. You started your business right before COVID. You showed us last time you were here, you showed us how you designed some things. You making custom t-shirts that pretty much anybody that wanted something. You were making a lot of things for MPHC, a lot of things for the LGBT community, a lot of things for Black Lives Matter. So just take us through how the business started and kind of your background in all this.
So again, I like to first let me mute this chat that I'm in because it is driving me crazy. Okay. Now, I like to talk about how I got started out of what I like to call necessity, because for years and years and years, I was an accountant, and that was very, very boring. It wasn't very fulfilling. And I just decided one day to buy a craft cutter, and a couple of months out, well, not even a couple of months, maybe like 30 days after that, the world shut down. And so it became my hobby turned into my company. And for the first couple of years, I made every single thing by myself with my own two hands. And now I have all kinds of braces and stuff that I have to wear because I've broken my body, broken my body down. But in 2022, I think I went viral, or 21, 22. Either way, I went viral, and that changed my life. It changed my business model. It changed everything about the way that I work. And so one of my goals was always to take what I do and turn it into something that I can monetize the knowledge and the expertise for. And so that's where we sit today, now 4 years later.
Yeah. So tell us about that, because like I said, I was ready to show them your website, all the things you were selling, all the different designs you had, all the things you've done in the past. So you have made this change very recently.
Yes, very recently. The biggest break of my life happened earlier this year when I had artwork of mine premiere at the Dreamville Festival, which is hosted by J. Cole and all the Dreamville family in North Carolina. I didn't really realize how good my artwork was until other people started to tell me. And after that, I found that they would pay lots of money for that artwork. And so what I do now is I actually get to create for lots of brands, lots of different companies, lots of artists, album cover art. And it's really crazy because even today I'll create something and I'm saying, oh, it's not that good. I mean, I guess. But that's really where I am now. I'm doing consulting with different companies. I just got a government contract to do some logo work. So it's really, yeah, it's now, don't get me wrong, I still create apparel, but it's not something that I do every day because I don't have to anymore. I can do it for fun. And I like to tell people that when you start a company of any kind, please let it be something that you enjoy doing.
Absolutely.
But make your absolute hobby your job, because after you get to a certain point of success, it's no longer fun. So I am able to now take what's in my head, monetize that, and go back to creating apparel and things like that for fun.
That's awesome. Now you mentioned something there, and I always like talking about this. You talked about you saw people would pay a lot of money for things. Now, a mistake that I see a lot of young entrepreneurs make, especially some that have come through this class, they have a great idea, great logo, great customer service, but they're not charging enough. And I immediately tell them, you cannot think like a 15-year-old. You have to think like somebody is going, all the work you put in. Just because your friends don't want to pay a lot for it doesn't mean somebody else will. Because in your case, you were putting in your own manual labor. You didn't have you weren't using cheap t-shirts. You were spending a lot of time on this.
Mhm.
So you can add things to products, then that allows you to charge more. So talk about that struggle that you had getting the right price on things, because I think that is such a big hurdle for some of these young kids starting their own business.
Absolutely. I don't know if you remember, but you asked me this question a couple of years ago, and I was like, I don't know because I still undervalue myself. So I'm happy to report that I figured that out really quickly. One thing that I like to make sure that people understand, whether you're 15 or 55, is time is non-refundable, right? Like you don't have a receipt. You can go somewhere and say, give me my time back. And so you have to make sure that you are charging for your time as much as you believe that you are worth, right? So I am worth $135 an hour. No, we're not going to even negotiate about this because I have over time recognized that I can't get these hours back. And $20 an hour is not a lot of money. For anybody who is listening to me, please don't let anybody tell you that you should create anything that you do for $20 an hour. This is why we become entrepreneurs, so that we can build things that 100% value who we believe that we are. Now, am I saying that going to get a job for $20 an hour is a bad idea? No, but what I am saying is if you decide that you want to create your own job, value your time, value your time, value your time. Otherwise, you'll look back and you'll be like, where did this time go and what do I have to show for it? Because even now, 4 years later, I am learning to put my hands like on tangible work that I've done. Because for a while, I created nearly 4,000 t-shirts and I had nothing to show for it other than carpal tunnel.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Now tell us about, you had a wide market, even though it was majority of your stuff was female based. You had a lot of things that could appeal to a lot of people, and you listened. And I thought it was great. You had a question from this class that inspired you to try a new market. So talk about how you determined what you were going to make and how you read your customer base and what their trends were.
So one thing about that is when I started, I'll talk about how I kind of fell flat on my face to begin with, and then how you can just kind of narrow down your audience. When I started, I wanted to do everything for everybody because I never wanted to say no, right? And this was, I think, before we even met. I was doing mugs and mailboxes and t-shirts and bags and umbrellas and keychains and everything that you could possibly think of because I didn't know who my audience was. But what I started to realize is, well, what do I want to see, right? Who do I want to see represented? And because of who I am, I'm Black, I'm a Black woman, I'm a minority, right? I wanted to make sure that I gave a voice to the people who otherwise wouldn't have one. And so my biggest theme was, when you walk into a room, what can your apparel say that you can't? And that's how I was able to, figure out who I personally wanted to speak to. Now, again, it took some trial and error, but learn from me that the mirror is always a good place to start, especially if you're doing something that's service-based. So if you're creating, apparel for people, or if you're offering a service, like I work with also formerly incarcerated men and women. So I always want to make sure that I'm speaking their language, because otherwise you won't be effective in any market that you're in.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, because that's another way. Even if you have a great price, you can overwork yourself. If you can't meet the demand, it doesn't matter if you're charging right or not. If you can't meet the demand, they're going to use somebody else.
Absolutely.
Because one thing I always say in this class, I say this a lot, is when you're an entrepreneur, you have to understand the customer. You need the customer more than the customer needs you. So you have to do something to set yourself apart, not only to make it worth their time and their money, but to show that they're actually getting a good investment.
Absolutely. And that goes into the kind of the consulting work that I do on the marketing and the branding side, because that's another thing that I didn't really know that I was good at until people started telling me, like, oh my gosh, like, we heard about you from your social media or, word of mouth. And I was like, okay, so let me figure out how I did that and then teach other people how. Your brand is probably the most important part of being an entrepreneur, because again, you need your customer a whole lot more than they need you, unless you're McDonald's or Walmart or, these huge brands who have created a space where now we kind of need them a little more than they need us, because supply and demand, right? But until you get there treat every single customer like it is your only customer and your last customer, because it very well could be.
Absolutely. And, and I always say if people will buy it, you need to sell it. And if people will pay it, you need to charge it. But at the
Mhm.
same time, you don't want to rip people off, because then, like you said, the old saying is, if you're bad, or if you're good, they'll tell two people. If you're bad, they'll tell 100 people.
Yeah. And another
Now,
thing I kind of want to touch on, before we move on, I kind of want to touch on
okay.
is making sure that you are, whatever it is that you choose to do, making sure that you are trying to be the best at it. That means educating yourself. That means taking, all the free classes. That means going to YouTube University, because the more you know and the more you can demonstrate about whatever it is that you choose to do, the more you can charge for that service and for that time.
Absolutely. Now, last class we watched, there's a clip of you on YouTube just a few months ago at a Black women venture event in DC, where you were giving your pitch. Now, obviously, you're not a public speaker, you're an artist, but that's a skill that entrepreneurs have got to master. We do presentations
Absolutely.
here, and they get so mad and think I'm being mean when I have them get up and present in front of the class. But that is such a vital skill, even if you don't want to be an entrepreneur. That can make you a great employee. And entrepreneurs want people that can think like an entrepreneur if you don't want to take the financial risk. But being able to sell, and you were up, what, 45 seconds talking about, I'm Sassy Harrison. This is what I do. I want to give back to this. And it was just, it was perfect. So how important is honing that skill as an entrepreneur?
If you can't sell yourself, you might as well quit, right? And I don't like quitters, so we have to show you how to sell yourself. Period, point blank, that's the end of story. For me, the way I approach my pitch or public speaking in general is, this is the fight of my life, and my reputation is mine and mine alone to own. So if I'm going to stand up in front of somebody, I cannot know what I'm talking about, but you wouldn't know it. And that is one of the best things that I learned just in, I think I learned this from my great grandmother, because that's who raised me. And she was like, nobody should ever know you don't know what you're talking about. Figure it out and go find out later. And I guess I approach public speaking just like that, because again, if you cannot sell yourself, you might as well quit. And I don't like quitters, so we have to figure out how to sell ourselves. Public speaking is absolutely positively one of the things that you have to master. And the way you can master it is talk to yourself. It's me and my bird most of the time, all day, every day. And so I have full-blown conversations with everything around me. Look in the mirror and just talk to yourself. Once you become comfortable looking at yourself in the mirror, nobody else really matters.
Absolutely. And I have people say all the time, well, I want to be a hairstylist. Okay, you got to be able to talk to customers. You got to tell them how much it costs. Or my favorite is, oh, I'm just going to drive trucks. Okay, if you're going to be an owner operator, you better know how to sell that you can get
Mhm.
something fast, uh, faster than somebody else, and know what you're hauling and the tonnage and all that stuff. So I don't care what you're doing. It's a skill you have to have. And I thought you were great on that clip. So I was glad to get to show that.
And then another thing too is public speaking. You're not always on a stage in front of an audience, right? You're not necessarily selling anything to a mass audience. It may be the banker that you're sitting in front of because you need some funding. And if you can't come across as confident in your product in front of them, then they have no incentive whatsoever to write you a check. Even if you're a truck driver, say you need to go in and front some fuel. I don't know how any of this works. So I don't know if you can do that or not, but let's just say for the sake of argument, I really want to take this haul, but I can't make it with, whatever I have. Can you front me some fuel or whatever? If you can't convince me that you're going to come back after you drop this load off and pay me back or whatever it is, and I don't want to work with you. And that's also a skill that you need to master while you're in high school and college, because you may have to sell yourself to your professor or your teacher. Hey, listen, I can't meet this deadline, but I promise you I got you, because this is my work ethic before. That works. And in the real world, don't let any professor or teacher tell you, but in the real world, we make excuses all the time. Sometimes we just can't meet the deadline at work, and you have to learn to give yourself grace, but also be confident in whatever your ability it is to sway whoever you're talking to.
Absolutely. Now, and I cannot believe I did not know this about you. I did not know you had a background in accounting.
Mhm.
But
These degrees on the wall are accounting degrees. They're blurred out, but that's what they are.
that's awesome. I did not know that, but and that's super cool. Now, but that's also a key point, because a lot of entrepreneurs, have all the great skills we talked about, but they don't understand the financial side of it.
Mhm.
Because you can great on social media, you can, do a lot of things the right way, but if you don't handle the financial side, which is the quote boring side, you're gonna find yourself in an uphill battle. So let's say somebody doesn't have that accounting background. What are some ways that they can have solid bookkeeping, not only to keep up with their revenue, but to make sure all the taxes and everything are taken care of?
So accounting is not hard, right? There's nothing hard about accounting. And I'm not just saying that because I was an accountant. It's literally what it sounds like. You're counting. So pay attention to the money you make versus the money you spend. That's all accounting is. So if you say, for instance, you can't afford to outsource accounting or a bookkeeper, keep a spreadsheet. Pay attention to, I spent this much money on ink, or I spent this much money on, if you're a cook, I spent this much money on bananas. That's where you start. And then when you get to the point where you can hire someone, then you can give them all of the work that you've had thus far. Also, there are lots and lots and lots of free accounting softwares, QuickBooks. I think it's called Xero, Xero. Those are free. And again, YouTube University is also free. Pay attention to those videos, figure out how to do it on your own. Now, I'm not saying file your tax returns and any of that stuff on your own. Please don't do that. But at the very least, you can keep up with your own expenses and your income so that when you go out to get your tax returns filed as an entrepreneur, you're good to go.
Yeah. And also there's other entrepreneurs that work with entrepreneurs. There's another friend of this class in New York, and she has a company called the BLK Report, and she does she does all the financials for Black owned businesses. And it's, it's
I'm
businesses
writing
like
that
you,
down.
it's one or two people, and she works with them remotely. So that's way cheaper than having to hire somebody full time. But there's businesses like that you can use that I think is very important when it comes to somebody like me. I don't have a clue. I'd be lost trying to do the accounting side. But if you don't know that stuff, it's okay. But it's not something that you can just skip over.
And I want to kind of touch on too, just because say you want to be an entrepreneur today, but it's just not something that you're ready for, and you go and get your 4-year degree or your master's degree or your PhD, don't think that any of that is in vain. Because when I was in undergrad 20 years ago, a while ago, never did I think that I would be at 42 being able to draw and make things and be a creative for a living. I understand now that I needed the foundation of the discipline of undergrad, right? I needed the corporate world experience because that gave me the ability to start and run my own business for a number of years before I had to outsource any type of work. So
Absolutely. Now, the last thing I want to talk about before I get to their questions is you mentioned undergrad. And I know we have several students in here and in other classes that want to go to college and they want to be members of MPHC organizations. And I know you're a proud member of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated, as are some other great women and some good friends of mine. But let these kids know what the reality is of MPHC organizations. It's not just the step shows and the colors and the parties and all that's fun. I've been to step shows in my life and I have a great time all the time. It's fun to watch, but there's so much more to it on the fraternities and the sororities just than wearing the jackets and strolling.
So what I like to tell, I can't believe I'm about to say this, what I like to tell young people now is you can go to parties for free. You can do community service for free. You can have friends for free. Being a part of these organizations is about how you can impact them and how they can impact you. It has nothing to do with dancing and strolling and all that good stuff. Now, do we have fun? Absolutely. Right. But if you're joining because, oh, I want some friends, or I want some sisters, or I want to stroll, or I join so that I can do community service, that might sustain you for the first couple of years. But then when it becomes work, what keeps you there? And if you're making that decision as an undergrad, know that it is a lifelong commitment. So over the last 23 years, I have been of service for the most part to Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated, and I will until I take my last breath. So there are not a lot of things that I would suggest you commit to forever. as a college student, but if you decide to commit to an NPHC organization or any other Greek letter organization, just know that it is about how you can enhance the organization and how they can in turn enhance you. And if you don't see that somewhere, then you're going to spend a lot of money to be disappointed.
Yeah, and also in the undergrad chapters, there is an academic requirement on GPA. And then I always say, look, if you don't want to do it in undergrad to have that commitment and that financial burden, grad chapters are great as well. We have a great grad chapter here in Jackson for a lot of the NPHC organizations. One of my good friends is I think he's the grad chapter president of Omega Sci-Fi here in town. So always, it's never too late to get involved in things like that. So I think it's very important to understand the reality, even though they are just a great addition to a college experience.
Mhm.
Well, I got these questions. I'll get to as many of these as I can. I like this one. This is Robert Branson. He's a senior. And he asked, when you were learning to become an artist, did someone guide you to make the decisions, or did you make the decisions on your own?
So I am a little bit older than you guys are. And I was raised by my great grandmother, as I mentioned earlier. So I was not ever encouraged to draw for a living or even for fun. In her mind, you didn't make any money drawing. Get out of the clouds, Sassy, she would say. So that was the decision that I made on my own. And actually, well, no, I can't show y'all. I did author a couple of coloring books, but they're adult coloring books. And so I'll wait to show y'all that after 18. After 18. But doodling and drawing became my therapy. And for a number of years, I would go buy coloring books and crayons and that kind of thing and just escape back to childhood. And so it was a very deliberate decision to be an artist, but it is one of the best things that I ever could have done because being a creative is hot. I don't care what anybody says. We are the greatest people on the planet.
Absolutely. And it really is cool because I love how you say in that pitch on YouTube, I take what's in people's minds and I'm the one that puts it on print. And I think that's such a great way to describe it.
It's a gift.
Absolutely. This is Terry Thompson, also a senior, and he asked, what was the biggest inspiration to make the change to your business model?
Failure was looming, right? And remember, I said, I don't fail. I don't like it. Don't like it at all. And so when the world was changing, people were losing their jobs and their lives left and right. And it was sink or swim. What are you going to do? And I just took advantage of, and not in a bad way, right? But I took advantage of the fact that everybody was home and everybody wanted to be able to express themselves. And the only way that they could do it was to wear something I created and take a picture. And here we are.
That's awesome. This is Caden Williams. He's in 10th grade. And he asked, have you had any setbacks in your business and how did you overcome them?
Yes, 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 yes. So the business model that I have now, of course, was not the business model that I had in the beginning, and it's not the business model that I had 2 years ago. So remember when I talked about making all these things by yourself is really hard on the body? Well, I've broken bones. My hands, I think I'm developing like arthritis. Like there's just all these things that have been happening over time. And I was still trying to keep up with the demand that I had, the expectations that I'd kind of set forth. And I'll never forget when I broke my ankle and I was in the boot, I was still taking orders, thinking, oh, I can do this. And I ended up owing a lot of people money because I just couldn't do it. My doctor was like, please sit down. I remember I fell trying to make stuff with my crutches. It was just a lot going on. And it was a learning lesson for me because I didn't want to have to, I think it was maybe $600 or $700 that I had to send back because I just could not fulfill those orders. And so learning capacity the hard way is not something that I really suggest because luckily I have a safety net, and although I lost, I didn't lose to the point where I had to completely shut down and start over because a lot of people who started at the same time I started went back to work. So.
Absolutely. This is Demarion Landfair, and he's in 9th grade, and he asked, who has been your biggest role model?
Kendrick Lamar.
Oh.
And I don't say that because of the whole beef thing that just happened. That's been one of my favorite artists since 2012. And just here lately, everybody in the world discovering what an overcomer he is and how being a creative has opened so many people's eyes across the world. That is one of my biggest inspirations.
Interesting. I like that. Now we've had a lot of questions from these young men in here, and obviously we've got to really build our young men. But this is our young lady, Destiny Smith. She's a senior, and she asked, "What advice would you give to a young Black girl that wanted to start her own business?"
Oh, I love this question, Destiny. Oh my God. Um, this advice is to any young Black girl, whether they want to start a business or not. And that advice is know your worth and don't let anybody tell you otherwise. But also know that no one can love you as much as you love you. You teach people how to treat you. So as a little Black girl who will turn into a little Black woman, understand that knowing your worth keeps you on the path that you decide that you want to be on. I didn't figure out my worth until about 10 years ago. I was 30 years old. And that's when I figured it out. So imagine 30 years of just kind of flying around, letting people determine who I am, letting people assign my value to me. No longer will I do that. No longer will I let my daughter do that. And no longer will I let any other Black girl do that. Value you. Because if you weren't valuable, nobody will be talking about Black women.
Absolutely. Well, we're almost out of time, and as always, we just thank you so much for taking time for us. And it's just amazing all the work you've done and that you continue to do. But before we go, um, just tell us why these young Black kids, whether they want to be an entrepreneur or not, whether they want to go to college or not, why we need them to be successful and have these business skills in society.
There's a lot of reasons why you should do all these things, but I don't want to be the one to tell you what you should or shouldn't do, because I want you to do what works for you because it works for you. But one thing I do want you to recognize is you literally determine the rest of the world. I remember hearing, oh, you're the future and all that other stuff when I was in high school. And I was like, okay, that's cute. But now on this side, I'm looking back and I'm like, oh, I wish somebody would have told me this. Oh, I wish somebody would have told me that I was valuable. Oh my God, I wish somebody would have told me that I only get one reputation. Oh, I wish somebody would have told me that I can, that what I think matters, that how I show up matters. Because what I think is missing today is nobody's telling you guys that what you think is valuable. Just because you're 15 or 17 or 18 or however old you are, what you say and how you feel matters. And if you're not in a situation, maybe at home or in your friend circle or anywhere that you don't feel like you matter, know that you do, and you determine it first, because it goes back to what I said about little Black girls. You teach people how to treat you. Does that mean be disrespectful to anybody? Absolutely not. But assertiveness is a thing. And if you don't know what that means, please go and look it up and commit that to memory, because you are valuable. What you say, how you feel, all of that stuff matters. At least it matters to me.
Absolutely. And it should matter to them as well. So again, Nicole Sassy Harrison,
That's
all the
me.
way from the DMV, our nation's capital. It's just so amazing all the things you're doing. SassyFrizzle.com, all the social media handles. You're a great social media follow.
I said I was going to show you the back end of the new site.
Okay.
Nobody has seen this, so I will share it with you.
Oh, wow.
So because my business model changed, hold on. Good grief. Stop this one. Try it again. All right, can you see it?
I can.
This is, of
Oh,
course,
wow.
it's in major construction. But because I am doing more artwork based, I'll have like my portfolio, that kind of thing. And again, this is way under construction. But this is the homepage.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but as you can see, there's nothing really here. It's a shell. And I am not doing this. I was able to outsource it, which is something I never did before, right? But anyway,
But when it's up, SassyFrizzle.com.
yes, when it's up, sassyfrizzle.com, and I will let you know so that you can share. with your class. And again, I'm here. Email sassy@sassyfrizzle.com. Make sure you filter your questions through your lovely instructor, though, because you're still minors, and I don't want to talk to you without him. But no, if you need anything, just let me know.
I appreciate it. Always a pleasure. We'll talk to you soon, buddy.
All right. Bye,
See
guys.
ya.